Good morning and welcome finally to the first episode of the Yarn Waffle podcast. My name is Liz Ward. I'm a crochet designer and knitting hobbyist living in York, England. And welcome to the first episode, finally. Oh my god, what a palaver I've had. You will not believe. I sat down this time last week to record the first episode. This is Cassie, by the way, one of my two Bengal cats. They will be making regular appearances because there's nothing I can do to stop them. But yeah, I sat down last week to record the first episode of this podcast and it went okay. The talking to the camera bit went okay. I had lots to show, and then it came to the editing process and my computer took over an hour to even turn on. And then everything in the editing was slow and it was a disaster. And the decision was made because I was going to get a friend's old computer because he's a big sort of person into all things techie, and he wanted to upgrade his computer when he moves and build himself a new one, and I was going to get his old one, which we decided to move forward. So over the weekend he built his new computer and I am now all set up with his new one, so hopefully when it comes to editing this I have enough power and speed and no ability whatsoever. It's all new to me, this whole thing. But yeah, we're set up. We're going to give this a go. We've got weird sunlight coming in. It is date 21st of August. It is Wednesday. It is sunny, but I have scaffolders out the back, so if there's any noise, well, there's always going to be cat noise, but if there's any noise, that's what it is. By the by. Right then, let's crack on. Okay, first up, what am I wearing? And I am wearing my Boxy sweater. This is a pattern by Hokey Locatelli and I knit it in 4 different skeins of yarn, and I created my own fade, so to speak. It's not really a fade, but I'll stand up and show you what we're doing with this. Don't know what the light's doing, and for some reason the hem's decided to start rolling up, which is never done before. This is a large oversized sweater. You can see there's an awful lot of room in here. And yeah, so I knit it out of, the bottom one is a Rhapsody yarn, and the next 2 are by the Yarn Makery. Sorry if the camera's wobbling because of the cat. And the top one is by Gamer Crafting, and this came in a monthly subscription box. Yeah. And this is the first sweater I ever knit for myself and at all. I had I've only properly been sort of get the words out. I've only properly been knitting with passion, shall we say, for maybe about a year. I've always knit since I was a kid. And it's something I tend to pick up as and when. With a lot of my hobbies, I'll sort of pick things up, put things down, and not really get massively into them. That changed when I learnt to crochet, and I became so obsessed with it I had to make it my job, which I did successfully, thank you very much. And because a hobby I absolutely adored suddenly became my job, it wasn't as much fun to do as a hobby. It was still fun, and I still do a lot of crochet as a hobby, but I started to do more and more knitting, and as I found knitting podcasts and knitting community and things like that, I got more interested in knitting and I learnt more about it. My skill improved, and the things I wanted to knit got bigger, you know what I mean. It's addictive. It's lovely as knitting. So yeah, so for the past year I've definitely been improving my knitting skills, but I'm not perfect by any means. I mean, can we just look at how untidy that is? Not great at all. But so yeah, so the first sweater I ever cast on for myself was a flax, which is a pattern by Tin Can Knits, and it's knit in Aran or worsted weight yarn. And I was knitting mine in like a mustard yellow colour, and it was fine for a while, but as it got bigger I knew I definitely didn't have enough yarn. So I contemplated putting like a stripe in across the yoke and things like that, and the more I knit on it, the more I just didn't like it. And I wondered if the solution to this was the weight of the yarn, because the Aran weight was incredibly chunky, and I don't wear sweaters chunky like that. And watching podcasts, especially Amy on Stranded Dye Work, she had knit a Boxy and has subsequently knit about 20 more. And I really loved the shape of it on her, and seeing other pictures of it, I was like, I'll give it a go. And everyone told me I was insane because it's like 400 stitches or something. All stockinette in the round, and it'll drive me potty. It didn't drive me potty. I absolutely loved knitting it. Whether that was because I was creating a fade, so it was always interesting. I was always adding, you know, it was always get to the next colour. The same thing with like self-striping yarn. Just get to the next bit. You're going to do 4 rows of this, then bringing in the next colour. Just get to the next bit. I don't know whether that was what made this such an enjoyable knit, and I will find out because I'm going to cast on another. I love this sweater. It's very wearable, and it's a bit warm in here because the sun's coming in, but it's fine. Nice, light and breezy. Yeah, I love this, and I will be knitting another. Okay, that's the first bit. Is Cassie settling down? Because, yeah, okay, she's settling down. So shall we have a look at some finished objects? Now then, I have got 2 pairs of self-striping socks. Yeah, don't mind the ends. That doesn't exist. I have ends get woven in eventually, don't they? The fairies come and do it. Yeah. So, ooh, that's really weird light on there. I have finished 2 pairs of self-striping socks in the past couple of weeks. This first pair is yarn by the Yarn Badger, and it's her sci-fi colourway, which I believe she has said is sold out. I don't know whether she's dyeing it again. Maybe we can badger her to do it. Ooh, Yarn Badger, badger her. And this one is actually my own self-striping yarn. Now, I do dye yarn. It's something that's on hold at the moment because I've just moved house. I do like dyeing self-striping yarn, but it's so complicated and convoluted, and it's a process. Process I enjoy, but as of yet I haven't figured out how to do it so that it makes it, the time it takes for me to make self-striping yarn, to sell that self-striping yarn would just be financially silly, because it would cost too much to cover the time I put into it, blah 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 blah. I should have felt that now. Right, so yeah, so 2 pairs of socks, knit pretty much the same way. I use a plain vanilla sock pattern that I've sort of concocted myself. I tend to go for a long cuff. This one doesn't have as long as cuff. I'm fairly sure Erica, my friend, wasn't there to bully me into making it longer at that point. And I've got contrast heels and contrast toes on this one, but not on this one. And yeah, I do like a round short row heel and a round toe, and I really like that because you just get such a lovely smooth effect with no bumps or lumps, or just looks like a sock, and I kind of like that. So yeah, finished objects, 2 pairs of socks. This is going to be a gift knit, and I'll explain why later. These are going to definitely be for me because I love them. 2 pairs of socks. Done. And now if I can move the cat, who is currently doing her laundry, I do have another finished object. Okay, I'm back. I just had to take a little break there to sort out the light, and then there was cat issues. There may still be cat issues, but she's currently behind the camera, that side of the camera, in the window, so if you fall over, that's what's happening. Right, so my third finished object is a sock head hat, and I can't remember the designer of this pattern, but it's a very popular pattern on Ravelry using fingering weight yarn, and it creates a big slouchy hat with a big sort of fold over hem. Now I knit this out of River Knits yarn in the Starry Night colourway, and I think you can see how beautiful that is. It literally looks like the Van Gogh painting, Starry Night, so I can almost see that as the backdrop of the Van Gogh painting. And I'll show you how I knit this. I knit this in the helical method, which is very much a buzzword at the moment, but it's been around for ages as the helical knitting method. And what you're actually doing is you're alternating skeins in a spiral. So other people will explain this better than I. If you have one row of knitting going round and round and round like that, what you're going to do is you're going to add in another one on top. So it's like this. Woo! If that doesn't make sense, Google helical knitting and have a look at some of the tutorials. It's a really easy way of knitting in the round, and so that you don't get any pooling or repetition in the yarn. But one thing that can also have this random pattern, because with most hand-dyed yarns, you are going to get, if you're knitting in the round, you are going to get some repetition, some pooling, or just a repeat of the pattern. It might be a very long repeat, but eventually you will get that repeat in here. And with this, because of that sort of random nature of the paintings themselves, I didn't want that in this. So I used the helical method, but because I didn't have two skeins of yarn, and it would be very silly just to split the skein of yarn into two balls, because you're literally just making life harder for you but not actually changing the way that pattern would change in the fabric itself. I'll show you what I did. So I wound the skein of yarn into a ball like this. I wind all my skeins by hand. It's just something I really enjoy doing, and I just think they're so beautiful when they're like this, big balls of beautifulness. So yeah, I wound it all into one big ball, and then I wound off half of it. And that meant when I was working the two balls, the pattern, it's not a pattern, but that's the only way I can describe it, was going in opposite directions. And that meant that there would be no pooling or repetition of pattern in there whatsoever. And as you can see, it's just created a completely lovely random pattern. And the helical method means that there's no jogs or joins. It's a very popular method, and you can find tutorials for it on YouTube. The only problem with this hat, which I will demonstrate, it's gone a bit huge, a bit too huge. It's not bad on the slouch, I like that, but the hem has no elasticity to it whatsoever, which is a shame, because I love this yarn and I was saving it for something special and I wanted to wear it as a hat, but at the moment it's just not working. So my plan is to do a bit of surgery, a bit of knitting surgery, and to take the hem off completely and re-knit it. I did think I could sort of weave in shearing elastic, but in the end I think that might just take longer. So while this is a finished object, it's going to need to be doctored. So not quite a finished object. And that's all the finished objects I have today, unless you count, I don't know if you can see on my wall behind me, I've been making up these little frames of knit swatches to decorate my studio. This is my studio where I'm filming. This is where I do most of my crochet work, hence the mess behind. But yeah, I love these little swatches. And it's just 60 stitches. They are actually knit like a sock in the round, and I've been knitting them on 2.25 needles, and just using up yarn that I particularly like. So I've got one up here which is one of the same yarns at the top of here, the Gamer Crafting, which I think the colourway was under. Really cute idea. and I was making up another one out of the same yarn that I knit the self-striping socks, the Yarn Badger yarn in the Sci-Fi colourway. So I was knitting up another one and just sort of kept on knitting because, as I said, those socks aren't for me. I originally knit them for me, but I knit the foot a little bit too long. I think I was just I wasn't measuring, I was guessing, and that never works out right, does it? So I'd got enough to do a frame, and I'd shown it on the podcast that I recorded last week. And as I was talking on the podcast, I was like saying, well, it's a shame because I don't have a pair of socks in this colourway. And there might be enough left after I've done what's going to go in the frame to make a pair of shorty socks, something like Rose City Rollers or something. And then I decided I could just keep knitting and make a sock tube, which I can then go in and add afterthought heels, toes and cuffs. I used the word just. Ever done it before? No idea how it's going to go, but it might make for an interesting challenge. So that's what this is going to be. It's going to be at least one pair of socks, and I'm going to attempt to do afterthought heels, toes and cuffs, probably in a sparkly grey. I don't know if you can see this, it's got sparkliness in it. It's so pretty. So yeah, I need a sparkly grey yarn. Oh no, I'll have to go yarn shopping. I've got a cat tangled in the yarn. Oh dearie me. Right, while I'm on sock works in progress, or potential sock works in progress, I will show you my other two. These could be considered half finished objects. I have a Hermione's Everyday sock with a contrast heel. Again, I didn't use the heel in the pattern, I just used the one I like and I used the toe I like. And these are knit in yarn from the Yarn Makery, although I think she's now going by String Theory. String Theory Dye Works, is it? I don't know, she'll probably tell me. And I love this colourway. All her colourways had Shakespearean names, and she's currently not dyeing, but I'm hoping we can twist her arm because everybody needs some of this. It's so pretty. And I have started the second of these socks, but it is only a cuff. So that is one work in progress, or one half finished object. Don't know how I feel about half finished objects. It's either finished or it's not. And this is another one sock of two. And this is another Gamer Crafting yarn in the colourway Feeling in Peachy, which came in a mystery sort of bargain thing where she was offering either, you didn't know what you were getting, you didn't know how many skeins of yarn you were getting, and but it was a good bargain price. And I ended up getting 2 skeins of yarns, and this was one of them, and I absolutely love it. And this pattern, I don't know if you can see it, is the Thomasina pattern by Kay Jones of the Bakery Pairs, and it was part of her Miss Potter Club from last year. And again, I haven't used her heel, I've used mine, and strangely her toe that she had on the pattern is almost the same as what I do, so I just did mine. I'm sure Kay won't mind. And yeah, I love these, and I've really enjoyed the pattern. Wobbly camera. So back again. Yeah, these are the Thomasina socks, and I've really enjoyed this pattern. It's I think it's just a 2-row repeat, so it's really simple, and it uses twisted stitches. And the only issue I've had with it is that because you're twisting stitches, it's not easy to read where you are in the pattern, and I've had to use a stitch counter, which is not something I really like to do unless I absolutely have to. It does slow you down no matter what you do. So yeah, Thomasina socks. I have the second one done up to the heel turn, and what I will probably do is leave it there until I have finished this one to the heel turn and then do both heel turns at the same time. Okay, so that's my sock works in progress, and I have, I usually have a few pairs of socks on the needles, a hat, a shawl and a sweater. But at the moment I've got 2 sweaters on the go. And the first one is my Flax Light. And this is knit in Malabrigo sock. I cannot remember the colourway, but I have done the body all the way. And I am on the first sleeve, and it's a bit stagnant at the moment just because sleeves are, aren't they? And I'm losing stitches. Oh dear. Oh no, I haven't actually lost any. Close, but no, they didn't drop off. And I don't know if you can see on this, I've got my little stitch marker from Hannah of the Corner of Craft, my little black sheep. And yeah, that's all really I'm going to say about the Flax Light. It's on the needles, but it hasn't had a lot of love because I'm stuck on Sleeve Island. I don't have a needle cable the right length. It's just feeling a bit more of a chore than something I'm enjoying. So maybe I need a different needle. Maybe I just need to research. Don't know. I'll crack on with it and it'll get soon done at some point. And my second sweater, yes Cassie, we can all hear you, which is knit out of Sheepy's Metropolis. I've got like a mustard colour, a duck-eyed blue and a forest green. And this is, we're going to lose stitches again, my Navelli tee, which is a pattern by Caitlin Hunter of Boylan Knitworks, and this is the 4th sweater by Caitlin Hunter I have knit. Hem's just flapping up a bit, but that'll come out with blocking. This was one of the, all my friends are knitting a Navelli, I have to knit a Navelli too kind of knits, and that colour work was a delight to knit. It's very, very simple, although it looks incredibly complicated. It's simple because there are no long floats on the back. I don't know if I can show you. So you never have to twist or catch your yarn. You're just picking one colour then the other until you get to these little turrets on the top, and then the slightly longer floats. And what happened on mine at that point was that I kept forgetting which was my dominant yarn. So I ended up with what looked like little angry men rather than little crosses. But that's fine by me. And I've just got to the point where I separate for the armholes, and then I'm working the back and front flat. And I have been picking this up quite frequently, but since recording the failed podcast last week, it hasn't been worked on. But it will now it's not in the things I need to talk about on the podcast basket. It will go back downstairs and get worked on very soon. I am hoping, I shouldn't say that this is going to be a finished object next week. It's not going to be a finished object next week. It will, shall we say, it might be a finished object by episode 3. Ooh. Navelli. Lovely pattern. Can I show you what it actually looks like when it's finished? Oh yeah. So it's a cropped tee. I'm wearing it already. I may do long sleeves. I may be lazy. Was there anything else I wanted to say about that? I'll talk more about the yarn I'm using with it when it's a bit further along. It's not my favourite and it's making it a bit slow. But there is more to talk about. My last work in progress for this week, knitting wise. Crochet is still to come. So this is the Tracy shawl by Hoki Locatelli, yet again. I've knit another shawl by Tracy, by Hoki, and I knit her barkline shawl, which I really enjoyed after I got my head around all the twisted stitches. Turns out I liked doing them. I think I had to do about 400 million before I decided I liked doing all the twisted stitches, but once I decided, love them now. I kind of miss doing them. Can I do more twisted stitches, please? Purling through the back loop is my favourite thing to do now. Okay, so yeah, so this started off as the Tracy shawl, and I started knitting it in this yarn by the Black Elephant that I got from the Wool Monty in Sheffield earlier this year. And I picked up this yarn because it reminded me of artists' colour palettes when they've been working, sort of the muddiness of the colours together with these pops of colour coming out. And this is called Mudbound, and it is, I can't actually see, it says it's 100% superwash, but that's all I can see because it's joined over it. So I got 2 skeins of this, and I had planned to make a 2 skein shawl just because I really love my barklines and I want more 2 skein shawls. And so I had purchased this pattern, and this also, if you get 2 patterns at the same time in this set, you get a discount, so I purchased both, but one of them was DK weight, so I decided to go with this one. And I cast on and it was fine, and then it gets to a bit in the pattern, and I don't know if you can see this because I certainly didn't notice it when I was looking at it. I just thought it was a regular triangular shawl, where you start doing short rows and you're making wedges so that the eyelets are more on one side than they are on the other. And I was fine with this, but I knew it would require some concentration, so I popped it away and started working on something else. And then I went to the British Wool Show, which you may have seen I did a little vlog for, and I also did a haul. And on the haul I talked about the funky fish yarn that I'd purchased. I was trying to find the ball band, it's not there, and thinking it would go really, really well with this, and maybe I should add it into the shawl, because originally, you can't really see because this is black and white and now upside down, this is supposed to be a 2-colour shawl, but I think she'd used a very low contrast, so even in the colours, the colour photos, I hadn't noticed that it was a two-colour shawl. But you know, when something gets in there and you're just like, maybe I'll make it a 2-colour, and having this funky fish yarn in, it was called the Neon Neutrals colourway, colourway, diction, not dictation, God I can't speak. I've been speaking too long, that's what it is. So yeah, I decided to try it. I could always rip it back if I didn't like it. And now I filmed that whole video on Friday last week, it's now Wednesday the week after. And this shawl was here. I had done all this bit in the Mudbound, the Black Elephant yarn. Isn't it beautiful? And so since that Friday when I'd finished filming and I decided to add in the funky fish yarns, I have done all this. So I put it on a longer needle just so I could try and show it off, and it's still massive. This is the point. It is, isn't it beautiful? I don't know if you can see that the pops of neon in that neutral just go so well with the original yarn that I chose, and I just, oh, I love this. And this is what this one is. Oh, here we go. There we go. All those pops of neutral. Pops of neon. I'm losing my words. So this is a single plied yarn, and it's the first one I've ever knit with. And I think it's safe to say, as I can't put this down, I love knitting it. Now, I did one row of the pattern that sets you up for doing the eyelets and the wedges with the new colour. And then I decided to go off pattern altogether. because I had a choice to make, I could either do all the short rows, follow the pattern, and end up with a beautiful shawl, but I wasn't 100% sure I would have enough of the single plied yarn because the yardage is slightly less than a plied yarn in 4-ply fingering weight. Or I could go my own way, and that's what I decided to do. So instead of doing the eyelets in short rows, I have made it symmetrical, and I did 3 rows of eyelets here, 4 rows here, and it will end with 5 rows of eyelets in just the neon neutral colourway. And I have I've sort of faded it together in a way. And I think it's beautiful, and I can't wait for this to be finished and blocked and be able to wear it. Yeah, I love it. Makes me very happy. And I think that's the last. Wait. Okay, so I'm back to talk about crochet, and as I mentioned at the start of this podcast, I am a crochet designer. It is pretty much my full-time job, and at the moment things are very busy. I have 5 commissions on, and yeah, they're all with early September deadlines, and September is looming closer every minute, and some of them are projects where it's like I have the yarn I'm going to use in a basket and that's how far I've got. But I'm not worried. They'll all get done, and they'll all get done in good time. But one of the things I wanted to do with this podcast is to give myself goals in crochet, just so that I'm getting out my personal patterns as well as just getting my work done. And the first one that I know I have people waiting for is my nano gauntlet pattern, which I'm going to show you the sketch for. But this hasn't actually got any further than just a sketch, but watch, this is really cool. Look how cool that is. So yeah, so that's the nano gauntlet pattern, which is the latest in the series of gauntlet patterns from the Avengers films. I have done the Infinity Gauntlet, which is one of my most popular patterns, and I've done the Iron Man gauntlet, and the nano one is coming. I don't know how soon, but I am working on it. And the next pattern that I'm currently working on is an addition to my little amigurumi doll set. Now, I have tried to do quite a lot of the Marvel characters, but I haven't as of yet done them all, and I haven't released any patterns for quite a while. So what I'm going to be working on next, and next podcast there will be a new pattern for one of these, will be Captain Marvel, and she will be the first pattern in what will be the Women of Marvel set, which I'm not going to give any dates for when it's going to be released, but it's what I'm working on. So this is a little adorable Captain America. And who else have I got? I have got a little Deadpool. Isn't he cute? So you can find all these patterns in my Etsy shop. I don't know if I've mentioned my social media. I might leave that to the end, or I might just put it on the screen here where you can find those patterns. So yeah, so I have the basket of yarn, because apparently that's how far I'm getting with my crochet projects, ready to do the Captain Marvel pattern, and that will definitely be released, because you guys can hold me accountable if it isn't, on the next podcast, which will be in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today. So Captain Marvel, 2 weeks from today. But in between filming the podcast that never happened and this week, I have also set myself more arbitrary goals, and decided that I should probably release one of my own crochet patterns every single podcast, because at least that way I can give the viewers a discount on that pattern. And so what I'm planning on doing is every single podcast I will release a crochet pattern. This isn't as scary as it sounds in my own head, because I design a lot of patterns for magazines, and after a certain amount of time the copyright comes back to me, and I can then release it, and I haven't done any of those for ages. So I do have a bit of a stockpile of patterns that I can release, and obviously I'm going to be working on the Marvel character dolls, and there's the gauntlets, so there's lots of stuff I can work on, and giving myself the goal of releasing a new personal pattern every 2 weeks, I think it's really good. It's a good idea, and yeah, I'm going to stick to it. I hope. So when I decided this, I was like, well, what pattern can I release on the first episode? And I decided that I had this squirreled away in the drawer, and it's something I really enjoyed creating, and I think it's a really fun project. And I think with the time of year we're on, it's just those few last weeks of summer holidays, going back to school. I think this is a really nice little project to finish off the summer holidays and give your kids for going back to school. And it is a pencil case. Isn't it ridiculously cute? So this is crocheted in the amigurumi style, so it's all done in the round. It's using a cotton 4-ply yarn, and I think this was the drops saffron, maybe. It will fit pencils inside. I will demonstrate. The pencil goes inside. It's not lined, mainly because the fabric is quite dense. I think if your crochet fabric is a lot looser than mine, you might either want to just go down a hook size, or you might feel you want to line it. But I love this pattern so much. I mean, we've got layers of detail on the eraser at the end to make it look like that metal bit. And then it's just really simple. It's kind of your crochet equivalent mainly of stockinette in the round. Just single crochet if you're American, double crochet if you're in the UK. Round and round you go. So this pattern will be going up in my Ravelry store and on my Etsy shop, Amigurumi Barmy, today. I will be typing it up and putting it in my pattern format on as I am editing this podcast. And it will be going up for podcast viewers with a 50% discount with the code Yarn Waffle Episode 1. Approval from Cassie. So yeah. Discount code gets you 50% off the download, and it is discount code Yarn Waffle Podcast 1. Sorry, she's distracting me now. And that will be up later today. The discount code on the screen, because I might change it from Yarn Waffle Podcast 1 if that's too long for a discount code. And this will be available to download later today. Okay, so normally at the end of the podcast I'll have a little section where I'll probably talk about life stuff and any sort of admin, knit-alongs, giveaways, stuff like that. But I feel like I've been talking forever and I can't really think of anything to say, and Cassie is going to knock the camera off yet again. So I think we'll end today's podcast here. The next podcast will be out in 2 weeks. In between then I may put up a little vlog, I don't know. I'm still practicing with the camera and yeah, this whole format thing. So yeah, but let's end this one here. So this has been the Yarn Waffle podcast. This has been episode 1. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to continue watching this polished podcast, feel free to like and subscribe and ring the bell if you want to be notified whenever I post. I should be trying to keep to a regular posting schedule, but you know what happens, life gets in the way sometimes. So yeah, so that was it, episode 1. I'll see you next time. Bye!